My journey with Resident Evil is a bit different from everyone else, where most people grew up with the series starting with 1 through 4, 4 being probably the biggest jumping on point as it was the first game to really get third person over the shoulder shooting right, and it was an unprecedented moment in gaming. And I think that's why 4 will always be a masterpiece. But, I started on Resident Evil 5. I know it's controversial jumping on point for the series. I remember watching X Play hype up the release of the game, and all I could think about was how my brother and I were going to get to play a co-op horror game together. Looking back, was RE5 the first co-op horror game? Can anyone answer that? Please let me know. When we were younger, my mom hated everything to do with gaming. She thought it was a waste of time and money, and we could be better suited playing outside with all the regular kids. But my mom had a button we could keep pressing months prior where if we just kept talking about a game, this case being Resident Evil 5, she would eventually crack and get us our one game a year. I think she secretly supported our hobby, otherwise we would have never had a Nintendo Wii, PS2, countless Xbox 360s, and eventual PCs. The PCs were for schoolwork though. We could also only play on the weekends when all electronics had to be turned off by 8 p.m. That never stopped me and my brother from linking our Brain Age game or PictoChat to stay up until the late hours of the night. The trick was, if you heard footsteps, it was to slide the DS under the pillow, and if you got caught, we just kept it there so it wouldn't get taken by another sibling. That was our excuse. So when we got to play RE5 for the first time and how equally horrifying and challenging that game was, it opened up our child brains to so much more in the gaming world. Now, we eventually hit a wall in progress. I remember there's a fight where you had to rip a bug off of Jill's chest and it seemed almost impossible. We stopped there and wouldn't return to the game until months later to finish the game, eventually getting stuck on a QTE inside of a plane and then getting stuck once again on the boulder QTE at the very end of the game. I was playing Chris and my younger brother was playing Shiva. I handed him the controller for the boulder QTE and he absolutely crushed it. That was a pivotal moment in the growth as an older brother, learning that my younger brother was growing up. He was capable, and most of all, he was someone I could trust to help me accomplish things. At this moment, it was Resident Evil 5. He fired the rocket launcher and finished the game for us. After that moment, it's hard not to have a fond memory of a game most people hate, which was Resident Evil 5. This video isn't about RE5 though, it's about RE4 Remake, and after finishing RE5, I got RE4 on the Nintendo Wii, and I was scared to get past the castle walls part with the catapults because the zombie chants terrified me. This was before I became a horror game veteran by playing through Dead Space, which I covered in my previous video. It was only years later in 2016 where I returned to the series tried and true and completed 1 through 5. This time without my brother and trying RE6, but skipping it. I also played through the Revelation series all in anticipation for the new horror direction that RE7 was taking. I felt I was ready. All that to say, Resident Evil is one of my favorite horror series, and I have this personal connection to it. Going into RE4 Remake felt emotional. It felt like going to my childhood home in the way RE1 and 2 Remake did, and the way RE3 didn't. Hello everyone, and welcome to the video. I'm Manly Dogs, and today I want to talk about the Resident Evil 4 Remake. I know my review is late, but I wanted to beat the game multiple times and really understand what makes the game great, and if it holds up in the original in terms of scale and quality. Also, my workload compacted last week, and it's been very hectic on my end, I guess. The thing about Resident Evil games is that beating the game is really just the beginning. Mastering the game's different challenges, like Mercenaries or Professional Mode, or even just trying to speedrun the game for a unique unlockable, is where these games really, in my opinion, get a deeper value. Not to say that the value isn't already there in the base game, it's just one thing I really enjoy about the series. It's a perfect weave of gameplay, horror, fun, replayability, and I think that's what makes all Resident Evil games great. While you're here, make sure to please consider liking, subscribing, and comment. Tell me what your favorite Resident Evil game is. I said favorite wrong. That's okay. We keep going. I typically reply. You can find my Discord and Twitch in the description below. For anyone that's watched my Dead Space review, you'll probably notice some similarities here just because both of these games came out at the same time, also in the same time as Callisto Protocol, which is all three very similar horror-esque third-person games. But it's good to see that the survival horror genre is alive and well in 2023. Immediately upon beginning the RE4 Remake, fans are in for a treat. The entire cabin sequence that takes maybe 5 minutes in the original is extended to add atmosphere, but to also tell the player, hey, things are going to be different. The first infected you come across is a threat, but not unstoppable. A quick knife and you're able to dispatch the zombie. And after RE4 Remake, that's exactly how it should be. Leon is a survivor. He's been through the events of Raccoon City and lived to fight another day. Much like me returning to a game, he's a veteran now. One zombie is nothing. Also, I know they were called plagas, just my caveman brain tells me to say zombies. I think Capcom succeeded in feeling as if Leon has evolved as a character. The atmosphere also matches the same cadence Leon comes in with, and the game feels less like a horror game and more like an action game. I think it's a perfect marriage and growth of character and world. It also sets up nicely for the more hyper action oriented later games. The tone and horror from the previous games is still there, but it's a lot less. Leon and us as the players are more capable. This reminds me of Dead Space 2 and 3 being more action oriented. The necromorphs were running from Isaac like he would be about to infect them, but instead they get telekinesis to cross the map. This is the same for Resident Evil 4 Remake, where Leon is parrying attacks to knife an enemy to flashbang a group of enemies, roundhouse kick their torso in half, and it's just a great and a fun time. I'm all for innovation and growth in gameplay, especially for sequels. This game matches that energy from RE2 Remake to RE4 Remake. I like to often talk about feel in video games, how a game feels when I have my hands in the controller. Often, if a game feels bad, I'll quickly stop playing it. When I got to the infamous village scene for my first shooting gallery section of the game, shooting the guns felt, honestly, a bit clunky. I was on Xbox, and I know that may have something to do with it, but when I would shoot the gun and would just barely miss the head or leg, when I knew I had a shot lined up, I was very confused. Moving the controller at first looked like I had taken a triple shot of espresso and was shaking before even pulling the trigger. I didn't enjoy that. It was eventually mitigated by me getting used to the movement in the game, but it still had me questioning if I was an old and washed gamer now. On top of that, in combat and most zombie games in general, it never feels good when a zombie magnetizes to the player to interrupt gameplay for a QTE. I can't tell you how many times I ducked under a zombie or Krauser's lunge and still got grabbed by it. In speedruns of the game, that is sometimes fatal. Please, if you're making a zombie game in the future, don't make this a thing, and if you do, make it more interesting than a QTE. The story's just fine. I think they made an effort to make it they made an effort to make it feel more grounded and realistic, which feels more in line with how the remakes and even 7 and 8 are for that matter. They want to take a more grounded and somewhat reasonable connection to everything happening in the world of Resident Evil, and this game has that in spades. Whether it be explaining how the plagues corrupted the village, or why certain creatures were created, and how Umbrella capitalized on that, it all makes sense. Despite the absurdness that is the world of Resident Evil, I think I'm also the only person in the world that is interested in the story of Resident Evil, so when Ada returns and is a bit colder to Leon, or how Leon thinks and even still uses Marvin's knife from RE2, it goes a long way for me. Yes, Capcom continues to flesh out this more grounded world of Resident Evil. I'm paying attention, I promise, Capcom, so keep doing it. Ever since RE7, the storyline has had its hooks in me. Despite how some people dislike Ethan as a protagonist, I think he's a great character and great dad. Mia was a bit annoying though. Lastly, I want to talk about the replayability in the game. I think it's replayability is sort of the essence of RE games. Each RE game has replayability sort of built in mind and built around it. Whether it be unlocking the Mercenaries mode, unlocking new routes for Claire and Leon, or in RE2, or unlocking Ethan Must Die mode in RE7, RE4 continues to shape up in that regard. I've beaten the game 5 times since its launch, on varying difficulties and New Game Plus to unlock different rewards and cosmetics that alter the gameplay, like the trench knife or armor for Ashley, so she can't be picked up and spirited away by the plagas. That's still very annoying in this game. I think these things add value to what is already about a 20-hour game. The subsequent playthroughs are only 4 to 8 hours long, but it's another playthrough and I'm mastering them more and more each time. So if you like that in a game, I think that's where you'll find love for it also. Despite some controller issues, I think this game is an absolute masterpiece. I'm not going to bounce around it. The game doesn't miss, and if you're looking to get into the Resident Evil series, this is a good start. Once you finish the RE4 Remake, you have an entire backlog of great games in the series to play through. This game has heart, whether it be in gameplay, story, or replayability. The team behind the game that made it had purpose and a love for what made the original great. Anyways, guys, that's about all I have to say for the Resident Evil 4 Remake. I always have a ton to say about it, but that's just me in general. I like talking and telling stories and voicing my opinions on things I care about. I hope you do too, and let me know what you think of the video in the comments, because that's where we can have a discussion. This is the second video I end up writing a script for, and I think it creates a higher quality of video from it. Yesterday I talked about my feelings on this show called Beef on Netflix. You should go watch it. And I think the video was done well, but I don't think I got everything out that I really wanted to say about it. I really danced around a lot of plot points. Maybe that's because the show wasn't fresh in my mind, but I digress. The goal at the end of the day is for me to be making better content, and to get better I have to do things that make me out of my comfort zone, and writing a long script is one of those. So I thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video on Resident Evil 4 Remake. Peace out.